Member for Saanich South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in support of this motion to refer Bill 24 to committee, to the Finance Committee. I do this as almost a last resort. I think that this bill is one of the worst pieces of legislation that we've seen. The process to bring this in is as bad as the process that brought in the HST. There is no respect for the people of British Columbia, and the only way that we're going to be able to sort that out at this point, which is late, is to refer it to the Finance Committee. I would love to see it come to the Finance Committee as I sit on the Finance Committee, but the history of the Finance Committee and Bill 24 is quite interesting. Last fall, September 24th, in fact, the Minister of the Core Review, the member from Kootenay East, he promised that the public would have an opportunity to provide input to Core Review as part of the Committee on Finance and Government Services budget consultations. That was in a news release at the end of September. This shocked everybody on the Finance Committee, including the chair, because the Finance Committee actually does not have a mandate or any terms of reference on how to deal with input around the core review on the agricultural land reserve. And I knew at that point that we were heading into trouble, because although the Minister of the Core Review admitted that he could have done a better job at maybe warning the Finance Committee, he made no apologies. No apologies for treating the Finance Committee with disrespect and also blindsiding the agricultural community, completely disrespectful, and also blindsiding the members of the public. And so at this point, referring it to the Finance Committee for further discussion is the only thing to do. Now, one of the things that you do when you refer to a Finance Committee or a standing committee on a referral motion is to make sure that the bill goes through the proper process. The government, the members on the government side, act like that is just a formality that we need to get through, not meaningful. And the public disagrees, absolutely. In fact, Mr. Speaker, a public opinion poll came out today. And if this government doesn't think the public is in tune with what's going on, I'd like to read this into the record. It's a public opinion poll that asks if this government has done a good job or a bad job in making the following decisions. And I will specifically point out one of the questions that was asked: a good job or a bad job around proposing changes to the agricultural land reserve. 50% say they have done a very bad job. 50% of people. So in many issues that we see in the House, many issues that we debate in here, not all of them have a lot of public resonance. The public doesn't understand or is not informed at what's going on in this chamber. But on the ALR legislation changes, Bill 24, the public absolutely gets it, and they are not happy. And that's one stakeholder group that the government didn't consider when they tried to ram this bill through. Now, we, of course, heard from the Agriculture Minister earlier, his comments on referring to a standing committee on finance, and he said that the government would not support that. He doesn't support consultation. We're going to do that after the bill's passed, I guess. I guess this government is in a very big hurry to pass Bill 24. And I also think they're in a big hurry. Nobody that I've talked to understands what the hurry is. The agriculture community doesn't understand what the hurry is, but the government is in a big hurry. And I would like to specifically say that I think the member from Kootenay East is in a big hurry. He seems to be in charge of Bill 24. He's not the agriculture minister, but he seems to be in charge. And he also seems to be in charge of the whole cabinet, because he's forcing members to agree with Bill 24 when I know in their hearts and in their communities, they're hearing and feeling something different. The Minister for Social Development and Social Innovation is actually going to be interested in hearing this, because there's a rally that's going to be held at his office. It's called Bill 24. What the cluck? And so that's going to be happening on May 21st. That's a week today. A rally of his constituents that are extremely disappointed that he has not stood up and said that Bill 24 should be pulled from the order papers, it should be taken off the table, and proper consultation should be done. And I think that a lot of the members in this House, they will find, if they're listening to their constituents, they're going to find the same thing. Now, I don't know if the province has enough energy at this point to try and rally at everybody's constituency office, but I know that there is great appetite in many of the areas that these MLAs represent. Now, one of the things that is sad to me is that we all members in this House, many of us, the majority of us, attended an event this week put on by the BC Agriculture Council. And many of us went around and talked to the amazing agriculture stakeholders in BC that came specifically to talk to both sides of the House about the important issues around agriculture, the issues that they're working on, the policies that could help them be more successful. And I can tell you that I didn't find one person to talk to in that room, and I talked to a lot of people. I didn't find one person who thought Bill 24 was a good idea. And yet, this government continues to say that they have found stakeholders to support this bill. And I know that the minister that represents Kootenay East has a few people in his back pocket that he feels that this bill is imperative for. I don't consider that they're farmers, but perhaps in his mind, they're farmers. We all know this is a development bill, not a farming bill. The sad part about talking to the representatives that came to visit us from the Agriculture Council, what I got from them is that they've lost their fight on this bill. What's happened is they've expressed their opposition, the government doesn't care, and you know what? It's spring, and there's farming to do, and these are business people trying to make a living, and instead they have to put up with this irritating government trying to push through legislation that will affect their future and the future of agriculture in British Columbia. That's the problem with this bill. It's being rushed through. It is spring. Anybody who's connected to agriculture or eats knows that this is when the produce in BC, all the products that we grow in BC, start to show up on our shelves. And right now, these farmers are extremely busy in all of our regions, in Zone 1 and Zone 2. Well, they don't have the energy to fight this government anymore, so they're resigned to hope for the best. And I think that is so disrespectful to the agriculture community. You know, agriculture for many operations is 12 months a year, but it's especially busy at this time of year for everybody. And to push a bill on agriculture through at the busiest time for agriculture, it's unacceptable. I can barely stand it. Now, they've all said to me, the stakeholders that I've talked to, is what is the emergency? Nobody knows what the emergency is, but I guess there's been promises made. I'm assuming there's been promises made by the member from Kootenay East to satisfy, I guess, an election promise, although when we look in the Liberal election platform a year ago today, I don't see anywhere where any promises that the minister or the member from Kootenay East made to his constituents about allowing the agricultural land reserve to be destroyed and opened up for development. I don't see anything in their election platform, but I can tell you that I sat in a meeting with that MLA, and he said to some constituents that came down to show what a bounty they can produce from the Kootenays, he said to them, I've got constituents who have been waiting for 40 years to get rid of the ALR. And I represent my constituents. So I think we all know where this member's coming from. And you know, something happened yesterday that was extremely concerning to me. I was sitting in on the core review estimates with the minister from Kootenay East, and he was being questioned. And one of the questions around the consultation of the core review for the ALR came up, and the question was, what was the process for the core review? How did the ALR become involved in the core review? And the minister said that it was the same for every ministry. Ministers were tasked to go out and figure out how their ministries could be run better. They brought back that information, presented it to the member for Kootenay East. I would consider him at this point the premier, I guess, of the province. And they would present their ideas to that member, and he would decide whether or not the ideas were warranted. And so with the input from the ministers of their individual ministries, their responsibility, and he admitted this, it's in Hansard from yesterday, their responsibilities were to go out and make sure that they consulted with people. And there was thorough consultation to make sure they had covered their bases. And so when he was questioned on was the current Minister of Agriculture at that point doing consultation, the Minister of the Core Review on Hansard yesterday said yes, he did consultation as far as he knows. He wasn't available, time was of an essence, and he didn't have a lot of time, so he wasn't able to just do the consultation himself, but he trusted the Minister of Agriculture to make sure that that process was done. And in fact, I can quote from Hansard from yesterday. I have said a few times, and I want to be consistent, that the obligation for stakeholder discussion consultation was with the minister suggesting the idea. It was in their letter of instruction. Clearly, it's there. It was up to them to do the necessary consultation. I am aware of extensive discussions that the minister had with the ALC, meetings that lasted for hours about potential changes. That I know happened. I am aware that the previous minister had discussions with some of the agricultural organizations in the province. I think at least a half a dozen of them, maybe more. I do know that. He told me that, and I believe him. Well, this is what I have to say to that. We have letters from stakeholders, prominent agricultural stakeholders in this province, that they've written in recently, even as recent as a few days ago, saying that there was no consultation. And the statement that the minister made that there was hours of meetings with the ALC, I don't believe that. And in fact, when I confirm some of this information, I will be calling for a point of order in this chamber, and I will be asking the minister to withdraw that statement because I don't believe that it's true. He also said, which was very interesting, that the consultation that the chair of the Agricultural Land Commission did he said, I quote, I think in 2011, result in apparently hundreds of pages of notes that the chair took. And this minister yesterday, in the estimates for the core review, he implied that the Minister of Agriculture at the time had thumbed through all those notes. Hundreds of pages of notes by the Agricultural Land Commission chair, and the Minister of Agriculture last summer thumbed through all of them in order to get the information for Bill 24. I highly doubt it. Possibly he had the notes, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out. And if that is not true, I'm going to call for another point of order in this chamber. Because we all know, every one of us, every member, both sides, we all know the consultation wasn't done. That's a fact. Now, the BC Cattlemen's Association has always had a very good relationship with the other side of the House, and on this side of the House too, but I think they've been very good at pushing the issues that are important to them, and I believe the government has listened to them. And so it's quite alarming to receive a letter dated May 7th, so this is last Friday, I'm going to read this letter into the record because considering the Hansard notes that I just read into the record from the Minister of the Core Review, I would say that the Minister should be very concerned about what he said. Dear Honourable Minister, and this is to the current Minister of Agriculture, thank you for your willingness to meet with the agriculture community on Bill 24. The BC Cattlemen's Association has been monitoring the progression of Bill 24. Our biggest question about the amendments you presented in the legislature this week are, what will Bill 24 mean for ranching? What changes will it bring? Will it leave our industry? Where will it leave our industry in the future? We fear that these changes will make ranching more vulnerable to other industries and non-farming activities that aren't complementary or reversible to agriculture. We encourage you to take a slow approach with drafting and passing Bill 24. Ranchers have lived with the reserve for over 40 years. Waiting a little while longer to ensure that proper changes are made seems reasonable to our directors. They go on to say, it is our view that much of the uncertainty around the bill could have been avoided by including the agricultural organizations from the early crafting stages. At the very least, we should have had the information available to share with them. This is from the BC Cattlemen's Association. This is from one of the organizations that I believe the government side of the House has been touting as one of their supporters for Bill 24. They weren't consulted. I haven't seen one government member stand up and explain that. Why are these government members not concerned about the consultation process? How can they go back and face their constituents without having referred this to the Standing Committee on Finance for proper consultation and discussion? It's alarming to me. One of the things that I've really enjoyed over the last little while is that although this bill, I believe, will be devastating for agriculture, it has certainly raised the profile of agriculture. Everybody around the province understands what's going on, and they feel threatened. They feel our farmland is threatened, and they don't trust the government. They do not trust the government for the actions they've taken. Here's a fabulous letter I'm going to read from a gentleman from my constituency, and he was an agrologist. So he was a soil scientist, and he understands the agricultural land reserve very well. Dear Minister of Agriculture, our family many years ago lived in Lake Country and had a small cherry orchard on Okanagan Centre Road. We now have a cherry orchard on the Saanich Peninsula. It's because of the ALR and the Land Commission that we invested in farmland and agriculture. It provides us with certainty and predictability, which most investors need. The ALR has excellent rules to provide stability and does accommodate change for many land uses within the ALR. We have for 25 years always had our farm pay its way, and in the last 10 years made annual profits. We both worked out, now on pensions, but on only 3 acres of our 5-acre property have sold over $500,000 worth of products, including strawberries, green beans, garlic, raspberry, and cherries. Over that time, we have contributed about $250,000 to local employment. Our land is still very productive and sustainable, and hopefully will be for 100 years into the future. Our family sees the ALR as another excellent piece of BC resource protection legislation. California, Oregon, and Washington have also had strict agricultural land use protection laws. Other legislation which promotes our renewable and sustainable resource base is riparian zoning, which protects streamside lands for salmon and trout-bearing streams, surface water protection, forest protection laws, as well as groundwater legislation. All of these acts protect our investment stability and long-term sustainability of these interacting resources. Much of the ALR is positioned on valley floors and contributes significantly to groundwater recharge. Continued hard surfacing of all our valleys will ultimately reduce groundwater levels. This is very poor resource management, particularly at a time of water uncertainty and global warming. We have a very we have very capable provincial staff who can work with others to protect our resource and at the same time design smart growth systems for all to fit in a sustainable manner. The ALC has now had 40 years of experience in dealing with agricultural land use decisions. They are very good. To change things now, we will have a very destabilizing effect on agricultural initiatives and investments. Never before have we had a need for research and growth in food production here, like now. So many young people are waiting in the wings to have a chance at farming. Please leave the system as is. Growth will continue in BC as it has done for 40 years. Respectfully, Robert and Janice Maxwell of Oldfield Road on the Saanich Peninsula. I have worked over the years with Max, as I call him. He has been an incredible resource for me as a farmer myself, and he has much time to spend with young farmers who want to get into the business. He has also been the chair of the Peninsula Agricultural Commission. I sat as his vice chair for a few years, and I know that he believes so much in agriculture. As a soil scientist, I believe he also worked for the provincial government as an agrologist in the Ministry of Agriculture. These are the people that are contacting us. These are the people that want to be consulted. You know, one of the problems with this legislation is that nobody believes there should be two zones. Now, the government believes that they're protecting agriculture, encouraging agriculture, but we all know what two zones means. It means that one zone will continue to be protected the way it is right now, and Zone 2 will be open to development. It's obscene that the government members have been able to not take their place in debate. Every one of the opposition members on this side of the House has stood. Our independents, our Green Party members, all of our NDP caucus, we have all stood and tried to explain to this government why this bill is bad. There has been a handful of members on the government side that have explained to us why they think it's good, and everybody else has been silent. I think that is, it's an abuse of our system in here. We are elected to represent approximately 50,000 people each. If you do not stand and take your place in debate, Mr. Speaker, you are not representing your constituents. This is a very controversial bill. People want to know what their MLA thinks. I know that I'm getting copied on a lot of the emails going to other constituencies. The member from Kamloops is getting emails. I'm not sure if these members are not only not standing to speak. The minister's signaling me that he's received 5 letters. Well, I would suggest to anyone watching this broadcast, if you live in Kamloops, it's time to let the member from Kamloops know what you think. So these members are not only not standing in the House for their 30 minutes to defend this terrible piece of legislation, I'm not sure if they're responding to their emails, because I'm getting emails now. The minister's getting upset. When I say things like this that hurt his feelings, he gets upset and he starts yelling across the chamber. But honestly, I'm getting emails from government constituents from government members saying that the government members are not responding to their emails. I guess it's just another letter from a constituent coming through. Every single person in British Columbia that has taken the time to write a letter to all of us deserves a response, because the Agricultural Land Reserve is part of British Columbia. It's not part of the rural BC, it's not part of urban BC, it's all of British Columbia. And for 40 years, many of us have grown up with the Agricultural Land Reserve. It's part of our values as British Columbians. And in order for I believe, democracy to work correctly, every member in this House needs to state how they feel about it. Now, I can see where this is going, and it's unfortunate. We've just gone through second reading. We've all stood, a few people on the other side of the House have stood and made outlandish comments about how this bill is great. The Minister of the Core Review continues, I believe, to say things that aren't true, including in the Hansard last night as we watched estimates for the Core Review. Just saying something doesn't make it right. Just saying that this bill is going to strengthen agriculture doesn't make it right. I would like every member of this House to stand up and to let us know exactly how it will strengthen agriculture. Give us an example. One of the interesting things that the Minister of the Core Review also said is that, I guess we're going to give it a, let me find the exact quote here. When he was asked how the bill was going to affect British Columbia, Zone 1, Zone 2, he said, all I can say is that I guess we'll find out over the next couple years, in my view, that in fact is going to help, if it's going to in fact help farmers and ranchers in Zone 2. So he's just going to take a chance, hope for the best. That's not part of the way you design legislation. When you design legislation in this chamber, you need to go out, consult, make sure that the policies you're bringing in and the legislation you're bringing in actually will have a positive result. And that's the problem with this bill. The members on the other side have a song sheet that they're singing from. I guess I keep saying they must have an enormous jug of Kool-Aid in their cabinet room, and maybe it's blue raspberry, I don't know. But the statements coming from the other side of the House seem very uninformed. Very uninformed. The minister from Kamloops, who I believe was also the head of the ranching task force, I would challenge that member to go back to the ranching task force and speak to every member, every stakeholder that he consulted with, and ask them if they support Bill 24 being rammed through. I would suspect that every stakeholder would say no. Every stakeholder. The ranching task force did not, well, the minister now wants to engage on the ranching task force, that's fine. Let's just talk about the ranching task force. The ranching task force did not suggest that there be two zones. Two zones for, that's right, that the agricultural land reserve be broken into two zones. There was nothing, I didn't find anything in the ranching task force. I know that the ranching task force was asking for support to make agriculture stronger and all of the things that the minister gets excited when I say that, but go back to the ranching task force stakeholders and ask them if they support Bill 24. Would the ministers and the members on the other side of the House like to have a real debate on Bill 24, or will we continue this facade that we're having in this chamber? This is a facade. When only one side of the House stands up, it's a complete facade, and it makes a mockery of this chamber. And for me personally, it's embarrassing. I would like the members to stand up, because maybe they've got some inside information on why this bill works for British Columbia. But if they do, I challenge them to let us in on it, and everybody else in British Columbia that has no idea why they're pushing so hard for Bill 24. So we are now referring this by motion to the Standing Committee on Finance. As I said, I sit on the Standing Committee on Finance. I would love the opportunity to work with that committee and do proper consultation. But we heard the minister say that that's not going to happen. It's outrageous. I disagree with it. And, we're going to have to try to do some other motion. But the people of BC, every single day that this bill gets debated in this House, are becoming more and more angry, and they trust this government less and less. And I don't blame them. Thank you.